guys, I have a mess. Well, it's not icky sticky, but I made a mess out of this yarn. Um, I don't know if you guys remember in a recent episode of Oh wait, I'm Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I'm going to attempt to untangle this yarn live while chatting with you guys. I don't know if you saw was it Tuesdays? It was either this week or last week's episode of Dye Pot Weekly. I dyed some gloss roving, and then I added in an extra skein of yarn to help absorb that leftover dye to aid in the washing step later. Well, this is not from that project, but it's actually a similar color to what I got there. But the goal of what I was doing was really similar in that I was dyeing some yarn. Actually, I wanted to use the same dye bath for another color. So then I plopped this in between batches to absorb the leftover color. And I did that like multiple times. And so therefore, we've got this, like normally I can sort of like pick it up and find like, aha, here's the handle. But if you look at like where the tie is, that is just, it could be more yarn barf. So when you're dyeing yarn, if you start to get something and you're like, okay, I cannot figure out what direction everything is supposed to go, and all things considered, this isn't that bad. When you're washing the yarn, put a hand around the whole thing and wash it like this. Because if you wash it sort of like rummaging through the fibers like that, you will potentially tangle it more. So once I got to the point, I was like, okay, I'm going to hold it and I'm going to try to not agitate it too much. But yeah, this has lots of layers of color on it and is a beautiful, it's almost like a tonal pink and purple yarn. So hello everyone. All right, let's see if I can, this is not going to be a flattering angle for me, but, oh yeah, this is my photo mat, but I want to see if I can, of course I'm on my phone versus my streaming software. Let me see if I can bring you down into my lap. Okay, so when I go to untangle yarn, I try to pay attention to where the ties are. Now, I think in terms of yarn ties, in general, this is a do as I say, not as I do, because I normally do not add extra ties. And the tie, so this is Knit Pick's Stroll Fingering Weight yarn. There's an affiliate link in the description, and I put it at the beginning of the chat too. This yarn comes with two ties. One that is tied with the ends of the yarn, and then one on the other side. And the one that I find is the easiest to work on is one that does not contain the ends of the yarn, because there could be a strand like that's also wrapped through. So I'll start here and then kind of go back and forth. But if you don't have many ties, I recommend adding some. Do as I say, not as I do. The other thing I will say is that it is easier. So this yarn is now dry. I find it a lot easier to untangle yarn that is dry. After we like get through and do this, but sometimes before you start unwinding yarn, it can be worth double checking the yarn at the ties. So what I'm going to be doing is looking at this tie and looking for places where, see, like this strand right here is clearly going in the wrong direction. So I can move that strand over. And that is basically the way that I do it. I just kind of go through and look for the tie, and I'm like, okay, I see a strand in the wrong spot. I'm going to put it over onto the other side. And actually, this is now not looking nearly as bad as I thought. So, and if you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. But actually, it's not looking too bad. Oh, I think the other side's going to be the hard part, because I think there's like a bunch of extra stuff over here. But this is why like we start on one side, and although like this is yarn that might need to be reskeined, just because in general I don't like to reskein yarn. I only like to do it if the skein is really messy and needs reordering. But at this half of the yarn, everything that is going through the tie is going in the intended directions. So now I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to look at this side. And so I see, okay, that's going the right way. This guy needs to go that way. Oh gosh. Okay, so this side, the easier side looks pretty good. I know that this is still not okay though. Oh my goodness, was this like way less? It looks way more yarn barfy than I think it is. I really thought that this was going to be like a total disaster. And so now I'm just repeating the same thing over here and making sure that things are going in the correct direction. And okay, I'm looking through and things, okay, that was easier than I thought. You have a question. You were going to ask the lab group. Does Knitpicks sell bare roving in bulk like they do yarn? I don't believe so. I think that they only sell bare yarn in bulk. And oh yeah, guys, Knitpicks is having a huge sale right now. You can get 15% off of almost anything with the code FALL15. And if you use the affiliate link that I shared in the video description or in the chat, then I get some credit for that. But that stacks with the bulk bare yarn discounts. If we want them to start offering bulk roving discounts, we should contact them and ask, because they might do it. Okay, well, this wasn't too bad, all things considered. It looks like everything is going the right direction. I think that what made this look bad was just the way that like it looks curly. So now I have the yarn like this. Things are going in the right direction, and I'm gonna snap it. I'm gonna go boom, boom, boom. And see how already that looks so much better? All those like curly bits sort of like went away. But this is, I am like amazed. I'm gonna do that a few times. I thought that this was gonna be like an epic disaster. It looked like an epic disaster for me, and I was like, oh, since I can't just like immediately fix this on my own, I should do a live stream where I'm like, oh, this is how I like fix things. But this, in all honesty, does not look bad at all now. So sorry, I thought I ended up with like something more tangled to show you. But the main thing, and the main thing I do, is once the yarn is dry, I go to the ties and I look at the directions. Yes, I could also steam it to straighten all the yarn out. This one isn't super wavy, so I wouldn't bother. If it was a lot worse, then I might. But yeah, you could also just like soak and let it dry again. But the main thing is where you have the ties that come with it, just that's where you can check and you can see like when things are flipped the wrong direction, and it makes it easier to correct than if you start in the middle. It can be harder. But in general, when I'm handling yarn or washing or drying, I try to keep a hand on it and let my hand be a tie. And then I can, if we're washing, like just sort of like, run it through the water or something, and I know things aren't going to get like super, super tangly. But then I like to, I guess I can show you guys how I twist them up too. So I'll hold it in both hands. I twist one around, and sometimes I over twist a little bit, but then I fold it in half and pop one end through. And now this isn't quite even and pretty, but once I pop the end through, then I will like shift and adjust it and sort of twist it around each other to make it look like a nice and pretty skein. Oh yeah, no, this isn't a replay. I am actually live right now. And actually, I could bring my face back up too. Yeah, this, I'm amused. So I thought I had something that was a bit more tangled than it was. I guess technically this is also a bit of a sneak peek, guys, because this video won't be out for a while. But if you're dyeing a lot of yarn and you want to reuse the same pot because for timing and everything it's a bit easier, really using an extra skein of superwash yarn to help soak up that extra dye in the pot can be really helpful. Because sometimes you want to leave your yarn in the pot until the water is clear and you've absorbed all the color. But other times you might be working on a colorway where you've achieved the color you want, therefore you want to get it out of the pot, but you might want to reuse that pot. So therefore, you might, having that superwash yarn around, it's another leave no dye behind type scenario that I love. And you can end up with some gorgeous like tonal colors. Like the first time, okay, so how many times did this have color layered on it? I think it had 9 layers, just because that's how many times I used it to soak up the dye in the pot. Yeah, I think 9 times. 3 of them, it barely got any color at all. But that gave like so many different like pink and purple tones and shifts because you're effectively kettle dyeing it that many times. Which isn't something that I would necessarily recommend, but some of these one-of-a-kind layered colors, I could get something similar to this, but I don't think I could get something exactly because it would be hard for me to color match. Am I going to be keeping it that color? Yes. I am keeping this one as it is. I'm not planning to over dye this. I know sometimes I like to over dye the more subtle ones, but sometimes I add them to the shop and then see if someone wants to bring it home. And I know that what's funny is that like I love dyeing wild colors and I like knitting with them too. But in general, like some of my favorite yarns in the world to knit with are sort of like tonals like this, or maybe with some speckles or something subtle. And I can show you, I know I've shown this before, but it's cold enough that I've been wearing this a lot. If you recognize these yarns, this is the yarn that my kids each dyed in some videos earlier last year. My youngest dyed the yarn on top, and then my eldest dyed the yarn on the bottom. And this is Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn. And the pattern is the Afterthought Cowl, and it's free on Ravelry. I like love it. It's funny that like I wish I had more vibrant colors to wear, but I haven't written a blog post on it yet. Maybe I should do that well, I'm at the wedding and then Keith is doing groomsmen stuff. I can work on those blog posts that I've been waiting on forever. Nice. Okay, that's my plan. But this is a nice pattern for a really variegated yarn. And I just did like a pretty simple fade in the middle to mix the colors together. And in some places you can almost see the striping of where I faded it. But because they used the same colors, it sort of went together pretty well. So I'm happy with it. Forget what else I was saying about that. It was like, I really thought I was going to sit here for like 20 minutes untangling that skein. So I'm sorry that went quickly, but at least I could give some of my tips on how I do that. Oh my goodness, you guys. Tangled cat. It was appropriate. I untangled it really fast. I thought that it was going to take longer. That's why I decided, I was like, ooh, this would be a good live stream. I'm like, what else do I have? I'm like, in terms of setup. Oh yeah. Okay, here's a little behind the scenes tour. These days, when I film video ends, I have this vinyl mat. And I think I got the 3x4. Definitely not 4x6 because I'm not 6 feet tall. So maybe 3x4 mat. And it's an Etsy shop. Ink and Elm is where I got it from. And I got It's matte, which I like, versus shiny, which I really appreciate. And it's a pretty neutral color, so I think that like the yarn looks nice on it. And it rolls up and it doesn't show any creases, which is also really, really nice. I hope to get a few more, and like it wipes down really easily. But the one thing is that it doesn't necessarily stay straight, so I use like water bottles to keep it open as I'm filming. But this, I guess the like 3x4 size is perfect for fitting like a reasonable amount of yarn. I could use a larger one too, but I think too much smaller. Like with this one, I could, you know, put up some against the wall to do like a, you know, to have like a backdrop kind of thing. So yeah, that's, oh, and I've got my like light stand there. You guys. I'll have to tangle one up and do another live stream. No. Oh, goodness. Sometimes it can seem like there was one time when I was like, this yarn wasn't tangled. Why am I having trouble with it on the Swift? And I think I was just pulling from like the wrong end for some reason, and it kept catching on itself. But guess what, guys? I have wound all the mini skeins for the Hanukkah sampler. Hooray, hooray! If you've pre-ordered one of the Hanukkah samplers, I will be sending messages on Sunday, and I should be shipping next week. Oh, thank you so much, Amy. Those are like ready to go, and actually as soon as I sign off, the thing that I'm going to be doing now is filming. I'm going to have like a recap video, so I'm going to film the reskeined minis next to a skein of what the dyed yarn looks like. And this is actually going to be a really nice exercise in why I don't always reskein yarn, because a lot of these types of colorways that are pretty different can all look really, really similar when it's reskeined. And when yarn is reskeined, you can't necessarily tell. Like, and these days with more yarn, I've been taking a picture of like just the dyed skeins so you can get a sense of what it looks like. But when you look at this, you're like, okay, it's like a tonal yarn with like soft shifts of color. They're not repeating. You can look at it and it gives you a lot of information about maybe how it was dyed, and therefore it could give you a sense of how it could knit up. Versus, oh, Tangled Cat, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So looking at it, you know, okay, this isn't like a self-striping. Some of the lighter patches are shorter, things like that. But if it was reskeined, you would see a lot of like the striping through it, and it would be really hard to tell like how long the different color repeats are, if it's a regular repeating, if they're like really short changes. And I think it's harder to get a feel for the yarn when it's reskeined. A positive of reskeining is that you can get a sense of how the colors will all mix together. So something like this reskeined would look fairly subtle, and you could tell that it's tonal, and this is something that would hold up well to a lot of cables or something like that. But something that is really like variegated with a lot of like whites and dark and intense colors, you can see like, okay, that yarn has like a lot of volume. Therefore, if I did a stitch pattern with a lot of volume, the stitches could get lost because of the colors. And so sometimes that's something that's a little easier to get a sense of what the yarn might like, or what the whole garment might look like as a whole when the yarn is reskeined. So I know that like if you guys have a shop that like buyers have different preferences and sellers have different preferences, but in general, I only reskein things once, like if it absolutely needs it. And oh, I do have a sort of example. This is for a video that's coming out next week, and I don't even have the reskein as part of the video, but so guys, spoilers are coming, just so you know. All right, so this is some dip-dyed broken violet. This is my, like, you know, my signature, my classic, my everything, my love. And so this is the dip-dyed broken violet. And I just showed you what it looked like in the skein. Now these colors are, the hues are different. But this is what it looks like not reskeined. You know, and you can tell like a little bit of information from this, and that there's like different colors and different sections. This is what it, with different colors, this is what it looks like reskeined. And if I open this up, you know, it's hard to know how long those color patches are because it could be self-striping. Likely not, but you know, looking at that, it's like you see like what looks like these stripes going through. So it's like, it's harder to tell if these sections are, you know, pretty long, like half the skein, if they're shorter. And so ultimately, I think with a lot of the different techniques that I did for the Hanukkah sampler, I think that when you open up the mini skeins, you might see a lot of things that look a lot more like this, but then they will all swatch really differently, depending on like how they were dyed. And so I think that's one of the fun things about doing this. And I know that the pre-orders for the Hanukkah sampler have sold out. There might be, once I've shipped everything out, there might be like one more. And yeah, so stay tuned for like make sure you follow me on Facebook and stuff, because I will announce if there's like, if I'm able to release one more. But I am thrilled that my like calculations all worked out. But anyway, we did some untangling and some reskeining chat. And thank you guys so much for joining me for this little like impromptu. Like, I'm not even going to set up the streaming software. I'm just going to grab my phone. And honestly, the phone streams pretty well. And I really like streaming from it. But I like, when I'm doing the like dyeing live streams, I like having the more control. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to head out. And I hope that you all have a really, really fantastic weekend. And next week, there will be a undying live stream that I will schedule towards the end of the weekend. So stay tuned. And again, don't forget about the Knit Pick sale. It ends on the 29th at like 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure you get your orders in by then. And the Fall 15 coupon code does stack with the Bulk Bear yarns, which is awesome. And there's free shipping over $65. And this video is not sponsored by Knit Picks or anything like that, but I am an affiliate, and my link's in the description. So I hope you all have a really wonderful day. Bye, everyone. Uh-oh. I feel like there's always like a goodbye, and then like the second goodbye. So I did my first goodbye, and now the second goodbye, guys. Bye.